All right, welcome back. So last time we were able to request a copy of our Uber data from Uber, and they gave us a little package file compressed with our account information, our ride data, and some other things from Uber Eats, Uber Pool, and all of their suite of products, even Jump Bike Rides. And so now we have that data, and we're going to graph it in Tableau. So we already have it up here, so we were able to import that, and we want to check what Tableau did over here in the data source tab to make sure the guesses it makes about our data are correct before we end up graphing it. So here is what we have. And just looking really quickly, we want to make sure we have numbers are numbers, strings, and then really importantly, the things that are a little bit trickier are dates and latitude and longitude we have here, which is a geography dimension. So we want to make sure it's also a dimension, not a measure. So the measures are just like numbers that you track, and a dimension is something like a category, like or time that you can graph across that. So we want to make sure that's categorized as a dimension, which it looks like we have a couple things here that are right and a couple things that need a little update. So right here, it's mentioned that ABC is a string. That is not necessarily the case for here. That looks like a date and time, since we have the year all the way through the full time. So that needs to be changed for anything here. So it looks like request time and begin trip time and drop off time there. So you need to click all of those. So it looks like our dates are good to go. Now, the next thing, like I mentioned, was the geography dimensions here for latitude and longitude. So we have both a beginning and ending of the trip for your Uber ride. And it looks like they have the begin trip set to the latitude for this one. So you can expand it and make sure it's lat. This one right now says longitude. And I know, having opened these files from Uber a lot, for some reason Tableau is interpreting this not as a geography dimension. So make sure the second one is on longitude, and we're going to check that out. So here on the drop off, it did interpret this geographic role as latitude for that first one, but the longitude it has as not that. It has it as a measure there that is not going to work for us. So we need to make it a longitude as well. So now we've got the little globe on all of the ones that make sense. You could end up breaking out the full address here. It is a full normal address, and Tableau uses the components of it. That's a little more complex, and you could split out maybe the zip code and graph it by that, or the country or state. But right now, the latitude and longitude is pretty much as precise as you can get. So I am good to go with that. I don't think I need anything else. So now I'm good here with the data source tab, and I can pop over into a new sheet. I did notice here this latitude and longitude for the drop off. It has it here in the measure section, where it should be above in the dimensions section. So I can control click the two at a time if you want to do it, or you can do one at a time if you want to go a little bit slower and you want to convert those to dimensions. So they'll pop up here and we can graph based on those. So we're going to go ahead and take those two and drag and drop them to detail. And so now it looks like we've got all my rides across the globe mapped there, but they're just one for each record right now. And so I actually want to count. And so I want to do a count. Maybe we could do a count based on size, so you can have a little bigger one. So obviously where I've lived is going to have a bigger chunk on that size as well, but only if it's the precise latitude and longitude. So this isn't probably the best way to do that. And let's make this a little cooler. So we've got automatic. Let's change it to a circle. Let's make the sizes a little bit bigger, since the whole world is kind of large. And I want this zoomed out so I can see all the rides across the world. Although you could, of course, zoom in and just focus on a particular area. And you can control whether you want the user to do that or not with these different settings that you'll find in the map menu up here. So if you don't want someone to be able to pan and zoom when you're publishing, so maybe you're just focused on Europe and the Middle East for this one, or just focused on North America and you want different copies of the graph, you could certainly do that. So you can choose what you would like your viewers to be able to do. Right now, one at about there. And I also usually do something like this where I reduce the opacity of the circle, so you can see if there's a whole bunch of them on top of each other or things like that, then you can see a little bit more intensity of the circle, and you can certainly change the color there as well. So one thing I'm going to do, because this is kind of a boring map, I'd really like to change this to dark mode, be a little bit cooler like that. You know, Uber's got the black logo. It looks pretty neat. And green, I don't know, green means money to me. Maybe that's how much money they're making off of me, something like that. But yeah, you can see that different intensity of the color based on the quantity of trips. You can see the trips in Hawaii and Berlin and Dubai, and then a lot of them in Toronto and Seattle there. So that is a good start. So let's put uh, global Uber rides. Now, one thing to think about too is the status. So Uber drivers, for some reason, really like to cancel on me, especially around a year or two ago. They're having a little bit of a product problem on that. So those aren't really relevant to me because there's like maybe 9 rides at a time uh, there. So I just want completed. So anything with canceled status, driver canceled or unfulfilled, I do not care about. So that's going to reduce the number quite a bit there. So that's kind of fun. So now we've got our global Uber rides. You can also, if you want, one last thing before I go here, um, you can check out the map layers. This is where you can choose that dark. You can choose street views, more outdoor version, something with the satellite map as well. I'm going to stick with dark. You can do little washout things, and you can choose whether you want countries or borders or states or anything else like that here. And you can also bring in third-party backgrounds and stuff like that. So um, this is pretty fun. So a lot of things you can do there, but this is just a start. So let's go ahead and do another one as well. So I'm thinking, what else would be fun to map? And I'm thinking completed trip distance would be a really good one. So um, what we need for that is a dimension. So the drop off time or the begin trip time are dates. So you can do it by year. So let's do this one by year. And you can do it a number of different ways. So I'm going to right click on this and make it continuous as well. So we're just getting started. And now we need a measure. So the measure we're going to use is the sum of the distance in miles. So like anything in Tableau, it has a default property of how you aggregate it, and sum is the default, but you can change that to average or something else depending on the view you want to give your user and what you're trying to communicate. I'm going to stick with sum in this case, and instead of a line chart, I think we're going to go with a bar chart. And this view is not too bad. You can choose whether you want it vertical or you could flip it horizontal. So either way, let's see what that looks like. You could sort it if you want by this, and it'll show you what year is the most. So it depends on what you're trying to communicate. If I'm trying to show how much I spent on Uber in 2016 and how much that hit my wallet, I might do it this way. But usually with time, you probably want it in order. That's very interesting that there's 1970 in there. It sounds like there's some sort of a test data thing that may have popped in there or some misread of the data from Tableau. So I could do something to get rid of that. So I could put a filter on here. You drag and drop one of those dates to the filter, and I could click year, and then I can uncheck 1970. So now it's filtered out. Like we were doing before, we can change this product type here and just filter out whatever we'd like, or looks like we could do, I'm going to do airports, black, express pool, and see what else they have. Looks like they have some mismatched data here. So data quality always a challenge in work and everything. You've got San Francisco, Seattle, Bay Area. They kind of put those there, probably location mixed in with the type of product here. So not the best data, but I don't want to use Uber Eats. I guess Uber Taxi was there for a while. Maybe that's the Berlin one. They have some different rules and different geographies for how this works in their whole business model. So we're going to do this. How about distance by year? Great. So now we've got distance by year. You know what? I'm thinking something else could be cool as another layer here. So, like I was talking about, maybe money spent over the number of years in addition to uh, the rides would be really fascinating to see. So, we've got the fair amount. One thing we might have to do here too, because we have different currencies, I'm going to have to filter out and only maybe use US dollars, so we have a fair comparison on that. So my euros don't exactly match up with the US dollars. So I'm going to do that. And I want to drop in the sum of fair amount here. So it looks like it mostly tracks, although there's some differences. So there's a lot of distance in miles in 2017 and 18. The fair amount is lower, which is fascinating. That might be something to dive into later if I was going to do a full analysis. But what I want to do is take this second one where I dragged and dropped that second measure of the fair amount all the way up here. Uh, it will give me two graphs in a row like this. But you can also right click on that second measure and click dual axis. And so now we have them both together. And it automatically chose a stacked bar chart. I don't really think that makes sense because you have two different things. You have the distance in miles and the fair amount. And that's okay. You have those two axes, but it's kind of a different thing. So here in marks, you can change all of them at once with the all, or you can change them one at a time with the individual measure here and choose what mark type that you have. And in this case, I want to do a line for the money. Money, like I said before, I usually think green. So I'm going to click the fair amount and change that to green and apply with that marks color card. And I'm going to make that a little thicker as well so you can see the money line. So there we go. Now we have the money compared to the distance in miles for US dollars of certain Uber product types that are more around the transportation in cars. And yeah, should be good to go there. So that's another thing we can graph. Let's see if we can do at least one more graph, and then feel free to try whichever other combinations and see what other data you have there as well. I think we could do something like a density chart. So again, we can bring in the year. So for the begin trip time, we have up there, and I'd change that to a continuous variable, so you don't have everything kind of chopped up. We'll cover that in another time. I want to bring in those filters again, so we're going to bring in that year filter. So I think drag and drop that by clicking Control and holding that, so you can keep it in both places without moving it. And choose that, and then all, or okay, we'll just, there we go, that all, and unselect 1970. Cool. So we've got the year fixed. We want, I think we can keep in the other currencies and all that sort of stuff because we're just looking at the sum of distance across everything. So that's fine. We'll just keep these filters as the minimal, and we'll go ahead and bring that measure down here, the sum of the distance in miles. And this is similar to what we had before. We did a bar chart, but let's do something a little bit different. And you can do other things here in the show me, but what I want to do is change this to a density graph as well. And we're going to change this a little bit. So before we were looking at the year, and this just gives us kind of like what a bar chart would have been. But I actually want to go to an exact date. So I want to know all of the different ones on those exact days. And because this is a density chart, you kind of get what I was doing with the circle chart across the globe with that sort of opacity. And so we're going to change this to a different color. So here in the color mark type here, sometimes you'll just have the ability to just do a single color. But when you have something more complex where you drag it onto the color box, where if you did a measure dropped there, like distance miles, or you change it to a density chart, you get this more complex one where you can choose a gradient, and you can see this sort of view, which is kind of fun as well. And you can change the intensity or the opacity there and make it look pretty cool. And you can choose to add a border or not. If you have kind of a darker background, that could be cool. So there you go. You've got the sum of distance in miles and the beginning trip time. So here is a density chart. It looks pretty cool. So we're going to do that All right. So I'm going to just pop these three into, actually, let's do a dashboard. So we've got three graphs now. You can choose this middle button to a dashboard. We're going to change that to a generic desktop size and get a little more room. Show dashboard title, call it Uber Rides Me, and you can pop these in real fast and kind of drag them around until they look all right, but should be good to go. Good luck and have fun.